guys, my name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. It is December, so it is officially the holiday season, which is personally my favorite time of year. I love gift giving, but since I haven't worked this whole year, I had to come up with some creative and more affordable gift options for my friends and family. And since I've also been trying to live a more sustainable lifestyle, I've decided to marry those two, and I've come up with 5 thrifted sustainable gift options for this holiday season. Gift idea number 1 are these cute teacup plants. These are honestly so easy to make. You just need a teacup and a plant. I always look out for vintage teacups at thrift stores, and most times I find really beautiful ones for under $2. I propagated this plant by cutting a little piece of it and then popping it into some water. And as you can see here, the roots have already started growing, so it is ready to be planted. I'm just going to fill my cup up with soil. I'm gonna go ahead and plant the succulent and cover up the roots with a little more soil. Since I can't wrap these planters, I actually made some little gift tags out of some recycled cardboard, and I also thrifted some Christmas flowers, and I'm gonna go ahead and tie them to the handle of the teacups. I used twine to tie the flowers and gift tag to the handles, and I am so happy with how these adorable teacup planters turned out. Gift idea number 2 is a 2-part gift. I really don't like using traditional wrapping paper because it always ends up in the trash, so part 1 of this gift idea is to thrift some scarves. My local thrift store doesn't have the best selection of scarves, but I picked out a couple that I liked for $1.99 each. I just thought that these were super festive and Christmassy, and we're gonna use them to wrap part 2 of the gift, which are these DIY candles. I've been buying yogurt that comes in a pot like this, but now I have so many glass pots, so I thought it'd be pretty cute to make them into homemade candles. This was my first time trying candle making, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, so let me show you exactly how I made these. I boiled some water in a saucepan and then stacked a metal bowl with my soy wax on top of it. Then I used a pair of old chopsticks to give the melting wax a good stir. Once the wax had completely melted, I added a few drops of some essential oils and gave it another good stir. Using this wick centering tool, I've already placed the wick inside of my glass pot. Then I just pour the melted wax into the pot. As you can see here, I also made some candles out of some thrifted teacups, and I didn't have enough wick centering tools, so I used some clothespins instead. To wrap my candle, I placed it in the center of the scarf. Then I folded these 2 corners in towards the center so that I was left with 2 ends that I tied into a knot. I used the thrifted flowers as decoration, and there you have your beautifully wrapped homemade candles. These scarves are such a great alternative to use instead of wrapping paper. Gift idea number 3 is so simple. Every time I go to the thrift store, I always make sure to check out the glassware section because I always find one-of-a-kind vintage pieces. The last time I went thrifting, I found these amazing glass mugs, and I just thought that they would make such a unique gift. Now, to make this gift a little more festive, I'm going to be adding a packet of hot chocolate and a little bottle of Bailey's, and I'll be gifting this as a set. I think this is such a great and simple personalized gift, and you can always switch up the alcohol based on the recipient's preference. Gift idea number 4 are these DIY scrunchies. I am so happy that scrunchies have made a comeback, and these ones were made from thrifted ties. I ended up buying these ties for $1.99 each, and most of them are 100% silk. I started off by seam ripping my tie, and this is what it looked like after I pressed it flat. Using my ruler and rotary cutter, I cut out a rectangle that measures 4 inches by 24.5 inches. Now fold your rectangle right side spacing and sew these 2 ends together. I've sewn and pressed the seam open. Now I'm taking the top layer and folding it in thirds. Then I take the bottom layer and fold it over the top layer, sandwiching it so that these edges meet and pin to secure. Now I'm going to sew along this edge, pulling out the fabric that's sandwiched as I sew. I sew a straight stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and as you can see here, I'm able to pull out the fabric that's sandwiched inside as I continue to sew along this edge. This is where I started the stitch. I'm only going to sew to this point, leaving a hole that measures around 1 inch. From the hole that I left, I'm turning the scrunchie inside out to the right side, and it should look something like this. Next, I measure and cut a piece of 1/4 inch elastic to 8.5 inches. Using a safety pin, I insert the elastic through the hole that I left earlier. Then I tie the 2 ends of the elastic in a knot. With a needle and thread, I hand sew this hole shut, and here is my completed scrunchie. I ended up making 2 scrunchies from each tie, and I think they look so cute in mismatched sets. For my final gift idea, I made these reusable produce bags. I feel like those plastic bags you get at grocery stores are so wasteful, so I felt like this would make a really great gift because it's such an easy way to make a little change towards a more sustainable lifestyle. I always check out the linen section when I'm thrifting because there are so many gorgeous vintage fabrics that you can find at a really affordable price. To make this reusable produce bag, I ended up using fabric from a thrifted pillowcase and a thrifted curtain. Here are the pieces that I cut out from the pillowcase and curtain. The measurements are up to your preference, just make sure that you end up with 2 identical rectangles. I then pin the pieces from the pillowcase to the curtain. Sew a straight stitch, leaving a 1/2 inch seam allowance for this bottom and top seam, and then repeat on the other piece. Now I'm going to press the seams towards the fabric from the pillowcase. Repeat on this top section. This next step is optional, but I'm going to hem this raw edge. I start by folding my seam allowance in half so that the edge meets the seam and press with my iron. Fold again and press on the original seam. Sew with a straight stitch and repeat on the other piece. As you can see here, I've only hemmed the bottom seam and not the top seam. Now I'm going to place both my pieces right side spacing and sew along this side seam. I press the seam open with my iron. Then I hem the seam allowance the same way I did before. Again, this is optional, but I just wanted my seams to be nice and neat. Moving on to the top. I fold the raw edge about a 1/2 inch and press with my iron, working my way across the length of the top. Then I take the folded edge and place it so it meets the seam that joins the pillowcase and the curtain and press. This step will help make things a bit easier a little later. Now I'm going to sew the other side seam, making sure I only sew until this point. Then I'm going to hem the raw edges the same way I did this side seam. As you can see here, I've sewn the side seam, leaving this top section open, and I've also sewn the bottom seam. Now I'm taking this folded edge from the top and placing it so it meets the seam and then securing with a straight stitch. Here's what the bag should look like now, so let's move on to making the drawstring. I cut out a strip of fabric that is 1 inch wide and then fold it in half and press. Then I take the raw edge and place it so it meets the folded line and press. Repeat with the other raw edge. Now sew with a straight stitch to secure. Using a safety pin, I thread the drawstring through its casing. Tie both ends of the drawstring in a knot, and here is the completed produce bag. I ended up making a couple of different sizes so I can gift this as a set. I really love how these turned out, and I ended up making a couple more from this gorgeous thrifted lace curtain. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that I've inspired you to gift sustainably this year. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Please let me know in the comments below if you try out any of these gift ideas or if there are any other sustainable gift ideas that I should try out. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season, and as always, thank you so much for watching.